The lives of people who lived during the Han Dynasty are frozen in time in these stone reliefs. They're working in the fields. They're busy in the kitchen. They're holding grand banquets. The foundation of Agrarian society was established during the Han Dynasty. When they look at these across the vast expanse of 2,000 years, what do modern people see? Continuity or change? Hanzhong City in Shanxi Province is regarded as the cradle of Han culture. An opera will be staged here today. The banquet at Hong Gate is the most famous feast in the history of China. It changed the fate of two historic figures, altered the fate of a dynasty and a nation, and gave a culture a name, Han. It has also taken on another meaning in the Chinese language, a banquet thrown with malicious purposes in mind, or with the intent of doing harm to the guests invited to attend. This simple stone relief freezes this famous banquet in time. On the right is Xiang Yu, leader of the Chu army, down on his knees. Next to him is Lu Bang, Xiang Yu's guest. In the middle is Xiang Zhuang, the cousin of Xiang Yu. He's performing a sword dance to disguise his intention of killing Lu. The kitchen is where cooks create culinary magic. However, history shows us that danger often lurks in the dishes. The dagger Zhuanzhu, used to assassinate the king of Wu, was hidden inside a fish. Soldiers and dogs waited in the shadows when King Ling of Jin threw a banquet for his official, Zhao Dun. A tiny incident at a banquet like this could trigger a war. Pork hock was served at the banquet of Hong Gate. Zhou Yumei lives by the site of the banquet. Pork hock is the main ingredient of her specialty. The pork hock is cooked with a shank. Once it's braised, fried, and steamed, the pork hock takes on the color of claret and loses its overpowering taste and greasy texture. It's usually known simply as pork hock with shank. but some also refer to it as fan kwai pork hock. Fan kwai was another important figure in the banquet of Hong Gate. But the pork hock he ate at the banquet was a far cry from this local delicacy. His was raw.
8块接到绳子架以后，把腿放在地上，把绳子架用桨看成块块，一手丢进绳子架里，一手抓就边吃带喝。
The raw pork hock is the only dish known to have been served at the banquet. We can only guess what other dishes were served at the banquet. Carts carrying liquor from a nearby tavern bump along the frozen winter roads, the bouquet of wine lingering in the air. A pot of dog meat, flavored with pepper, cinnamon, mushrooms, and salt, simmers on the stove. Kitchen hands, busy butchering pigs, cattle, and goats. A servant cutting fish into thin slices. Lamb kebabs broiling on the grill. These are the lively scenes shown on the Han Dynasty stone reliefs. Wang Hongzhen is a scholar who collects and studies Han Dynasty stone reliefs. To Wang, these stone reliefs are an encyclopedia of life in the Han Dynasty. Dipping into them tells us how they lived, even how they ate. The Baiji tomb on the outskirts of Jiangsu Province's Xuzhou City is a well-preserved Han Dynasty tomb. The stone reliefs here are more than decorative. They actually form part of the tomb structure.
汉代人视死如视生，他的生活理念、人生理念就认为，人死了，灵魂是不死的，他要过更好的生活去了。所以说，在这里边你看到的都是像现实社会一样的，甚至说超越现实的，都是那么好。你像这个，这就是表现的这一家人居家生活的场景。这个叫做尊。 你看，他这都画了一个水波纹、尊、酒器，盛酒、盛食，然后里边有个勺子，这是两个人在这吃饭。这下面呢，耳杯，耳杯后是一个叫羽觞，专来盛酒或者盛茶、盛菜、盛汤都可以。这两个人吃饭，小日子过得是挺惬意的。一个人拿着扇子，这个扇子在当时叫便面儿。 给他打着扇子，旁边一个人拿着扫帚，站在旁边，听候他使唤。
The people of the Han Dynasty made stone representations of life beyond the grave. Scenes of kitchens and banquets can be seen in many tombs, family temples, and watchtowers of that time. Characters that mean state granary can be found in many tombs. This shows how important the idea of abundance was to the people of the Han Dynasty, and how they anticipated plenty of grain, liquor, and meat in the afterlife. Rubbings reveal the details of the lives of people who lived more than 2,000 years ago in startling clarity.
这一幅图，整个画面叫刨除图，也就是我们常说的锅碗瓢盆交响曲。
This stone relief shows us some of the cooking techniques that were employed in the Han Dynasty.
脍炙人口。 这个成语的由来，细切的肉叫脍，炙就是在火上烤，这个就是在火上烤，穿好的肉串，一个手拿着在这个木炭炉子上烤，这个手里边呢还拿着扇子不停的扇风，像这样一种烧烤，直到如今我们还可以看得到，这种风气一直到现在啊，还是古风犹存。
Select a 1 kilogram grass carp, scrape off the scales and remove the bones. Wipe away the blood and slice the flesh thinly. It requires a swift and precise slicing action. The dish has to be served within 3 minutes of the fish being sliced in order to keep the slices fresh. The local people call the dish simply raw fish, and it's been passed down from the Han Dynasty to the present day. Although more than 2,000 years have passed, Han Dynasty cuisine still influences the food people eat today. The basic structure of agrarian society in China lasted more than 2,000 years and remained more or less unchanged until the advent of the modern age. The origins of this socio-economic system lie in the Han Dynasty. As recently as 30 years ago, people in rural areas still lived a lifestyle that would have been familiar to their Han Dynasty ancestors. The plows they used, the ways they fished and raised livestock, and the food they ate were all similar to those of the Han Dynasty. In Chengba village, Sichuan province, there are ruins of a Han Dynasty city. Surrounded by water on 3 sides, it's isolated from the outside world. Time here seems frozen. Here, traces of the Han Dynasty can be seen everywhere. Tens of thousands of Han Dynasty bricks have been used to build local people's homes, roads, even toilets and pigsties. There are 16 Han Dynasty wells in the village, 3 of which are still in use. Chen Shoubin is a simple farmer. He is rooted to this spot of land and works it with his own hands. About 20 years ago, he restored a derelict Han Dynasty well. It cost him 100 yuan. The well is built of curved bricks. Even in the driest years, the well never dries up. Water from this well is used for washing vegetables, cooking meals, and irrigating the fields. This Han Dynasty well has served Chen's family for 20 years. Villages in Chinese traditional agrarian society often sprung up around wells rather than along rivers and streams, the norm in some other parts.
我不是那口井的话，我没得来做了。我在俺们公路上起房子了，不是口井的话，我拿钱掏出去的，掏出来拿100块钱，100块钱掏出的，我到安逸都方便了。现在打口井要摊几千。
Just like many rural families these days, Chen's children are working away from their home village. Chen and his wife remain in the countryside and take care of their grandchildren. Their son and daughter-in-law work in faraway Guangzhou, striving to make some money in the city. Chen's son, Chen Shong, has done well for himself. He now owns a small clothing factory. For young people of Chen Shong's age, cities undoubtedly present more opportunities than these small villages. A better life seems available, only far from home. But the absence of strong young laborers has meant that many fields in the village are no longer cultivated.
年轻全部给打工去了，这个庄稼就些苦了的嘛。农村辛苦，农村确实辛苦。像我们3亩田呢，打3000斤的谷子，1块1的谷子，3000块钱1个月工资，没有忙得一分后，干个屁股疼。
Sometimes Chen wonders if he will be the last generation in his family to farm the land. Among Wang Hongzhen's collection of Han Dynasty cultural relics are 4 extremely precious brick reliefs.
很好，水平很好。有身上再打浓一点。那水云，如果你要没有那个夏日出河的那个感受，你就不知道这个云朵的重要。有时候飘过来一朵云彩，那就非常的舒服。
The 4 brick reliefs show scenes of country life in different seasons.
发现这个砖以后，我是欣喜若狂。这是一组汉代的农事砖，这个是子母榫，带水眼的。就这样，这4个砖像汉代的那个4民月令一样，他把一年的农事4个季节的农事安排的如此典型、井井有条。
The best time for repairing tools and feeding cattle because a new year of work is coming. Throughout the year, the farm work was done according to the 24 solar term. Scenes like this were also carved into Han Dynasty stone reliefs. The head of the household works the fields. The ponds teem with fish. The lady of the house weaves, spins, and gets a good meal ready. Liquor and sauce is extra grain. The barn overflows with grain and is doled out to the old people free of charge. Dwelling by a well, making a living by farming, working according to the changes of the seasons. It's the peaceful and prosperous life that the people of the Han Dynasty dreamed of. Tushi town is on the other side of the Chu River, so Chen and his fellow villagers have to go there by ferry. On market day, people come from far and wide to exchange all manner of goods. Today's the Dragon Boat Festival. Chen is busy buying food for the family feast at noon. The fair is held every 5 days, and it's where Chen usually comes to buy and sell. Fairs like this were held during the Han Dynasty and are also depicted on stone reliefs. In addition to working in the fields, farmers of that time also exchanged goods. They produced preserved meats and vegetables, liquor, vinegar, medicinal products, and silk. Monthly instructions for 4 classes of people mentions that the people of the Han Dynasty made medicines to sell during the Dragon Boat Festival to ward off summer diseases and plagues. Similar customs are still followed nowadays. Hanging mugwort, burning yellow incense, and applying real guard to children's faces. As the height of summer approaches, the customs Chen observes fumigate the house and will hopefully prevent his family from succumbing to illness. In late summer, the ears of grain have become full and ripe. It's time to reap the rewards of the year's toil and gather in the harvest. It's important to do it before the rains come. Since their children are all in Guangzhou, Chen and his wife are short-handed. Reaping crops in the extreme summer heat is quite heavy work. Many villagers have begun to hire combined harvesters to help them out. Although it costs more, the harvest comes in much more quickly. But Chen refuses to use technology. He thinks hiring a combine harvester is expensive and wastes too much grain.
这个机啥地方啊，开得飞快，好啥不值，好啥得到。我看又去炒啊也不行，就是也打个炒啊，油炒也切不成，自己要艰苦一下。他那个东西那个可惜了嘛，那个天然处理的嘛，那个粮食的东西，人就喜欢那个东西，生活的。
It's hot and the reaping can't be delayed, so Chen and his wife get up at midnight to reap the grain. In the past, the harvest was the big event and the whole family got involved. But now Chen and his wife have no choice but to rely on themselves. The sickles they use look almost the same as those used during the Han Dynasty. Sickles like this are carved on some of the stone reliefs unearthed in Sichuan. On the right, 2 farmers are waving long-handled sickles, a recent invention back then. In the Han Dynasty, the spread of iron farming tools, especially advanced forging tools, greatly improved agricultural efficiency. Having spent so much time and energy on the crops, Chen Xiaoben knows exactly how precious each ear of grain is. That's why he insists on gathering in the harvest by hand. After threshing the wheat, Chen gathers the straw that's left behind and lays it aside to feed the cattle over the winter. Chen's diligence, thrift, love and understanding of the land are the legacy of China's traditional agrarian culture. In the Agrarian age, there was hunger. But this hunger made people look for alternative sources of food. Many of these came to be regarded as delicacies. Siberian elm fruit is one of the best examples.
在过去这是好菜，这个菜啊，都当肉吃。那时候我小时候，
In this village by the Yi River, 80-year-old Ma Liang has a special attachment to Siberian elm fruit. He used to eat it to ward off hunger. He hasn't tasted it for more than 20 years. According to Han historical records, Siberian elm fruit can serve as a staple food and be made into sauces. Dried fruit can be turned into liquor during the winter. It smells fragrant and tastes smooth and is suitable for old people. Remove the impurities from the green and tender Siberian elm fruit. Wash it. Add corn flour and eggs. When that's done, all sorts of delicacies can be made from this simple, plain foodstuff. In late winter and early spring, people ran out of stored food. As their crops were still growing in the fields, Siberian elm fruit was their first choice. Picking, planting crops, raising livestock, hunting animals, and going fishing, the people of the Han Dynasty tried every possible way to enrich their diet. But they seemed to be reluctant to resort to nature directly. In 1992, a mud wall covered in inscriptions was found in the Xuanquan ruins in Dunhuang. The inscriptions are from the monthly instructions in 4 seasons. Issued in 5 AD, it was enacted by the imperial court of the Han Dynasty and reflected people's attitudes toward nature at the time. Killing young birds was prohibited. Killing pregnant animals was prohibited. Destroying birds' nests with birds or eggs in them was prohibited. Killing snakes or insects, harmless to people or crops, was prohibited before September. This reverence for nature is still seen in some remote areas of China. Yang Guisheng is a priest in the Qiang ethnic group in Longxi Town, Sichuan Province. The Qiang people believe that everything in nature has a spirit and that priests can communicate with the god of nature. In every Qiang village, there is a divine forest, which is regarded as holy. Hunting and herding are strictly prohibited there. The Qiang people don't work in the fields on the day of awakening of insects and don't cut trees or go hunting in the mountains on the day of the vernal equinox. They believe that these two particular days are for the insects to wake up and animals to mate, so they don't disturb them. When cultivating the fields in spring, the Chiang people sing songs to their cattle. In the Han Dynasty, cattle farming became widespread. Cows were regarded as the basis of agriculture, as well as a symbol of state power. At the time, anyone caught stealing cattle would be put in a kang, a heavy wooden collar placed around a wrongdoer's neck as a punishment. In the Han Dynasty, people saw themselves and nature as one. People's activities were restricted by nature. Actions that violated natural laws would be punished. They were grateful and respectful to nature and restrained their urge to harm nature. This was the harmonious relationship that existed between the people of the Han Dynasty and nature. Pei County, a modern city now, but full of traces of the Han Dynasty. It's Liu Bang's hometown. Liu was the first emperor of the Han Dynasty. According to Sima Yen's records of the Grand Historian, Liu Bang loved to drink. Fan Kuai, his fellow townsman, also had an amazing capacity for strong liquor. Han Dynasty stone reliefs show the drinking culture of that time. Busy breweries, bustling taverns are a common feature. There is liquor, drinking vessels, and people drinking together in almost every banquet scene.
汉代在早期在饮酒上是限制的很厉害的，因为国家呢要限制酿酒，要保证粮食。到后来呢，粮食一多了，这些酒禁呢也慢慢的放开。东汉以后，那个酒风也是非常盛的。
People still love liquor in today's Pei County. Huang Hongjian grew up in Pei County and was once the curator of the county museum. Every time he returns to his hometown, he looks forward to enjoying the convivial drinking culture of the county. When they are drinking, the people of Pei County become as forthright as Liu Bang. When toasting guests, the host usually fills up his glass and downs the drink in one gulp. The local people say that drinking in this way embodies the true Han spirit. Dancing and singing were an indispensable feature of banquets during the Han Dynasty. The Chinese people of that time were bold and unrestrained. When they got excited, they expressed themselves in song and danced with joy. Playing music, throwing arrows into a pot, dancing with long sleeves and drums, acrobatics. The banquets of the Han Dynasty were like small carnivals. This stone relief depicts a grand banquet. In addition to dances and songs, the guests enjoy more than 10 kinds of acrobatics. This performer is juggling 4 swords and at the same time controlling 5 balls with his feet. Blades are set on the ground with their points facing upwards. A performer is upside down on a rope above the blades, with another performer at each end of the rope. One man is holding a long, cross-shaped pole on his forehead, and 3 children are hanging on the pole by the feet. Under the pole holder's feet, there are also 7 plates. Power, speed, and balance are the name of the game. Only the nobility could afford such luxurious banquets. For ordinary people, a banquet just meant a good feast. July 2014, Chen Shang is on his way back to his hometown. He hasn't been home for a year and a half. This time, he intends to take his children to Guangzhou for their summer holiday. It's a journey of over 1,500 kilometers. Chen Shang has to take a train, bus, and then a ferry. He eventually gets to his hometown. His mother has already started to prepare the reunion dinner. They grew all the vegetables themselves, using no fertilizer and only a little pesticide. Their own vegetable plot provides all the ingredients for this sumptuous feast. Having been away from their parents for such a long time, the kids seem to be unprepared for the reunion. They are shy and hide away. According to the local custom, his mother cooks 2 eggs for Chen Shang, who has just arrived home. It represents reunion and good luck. Soon the distance between Chen Shang and his children narrows. They become close again. They begin to enjoy this rare and precious reunion. Chen Xiaobin and his wife are busy in the kitchen. It's the first family reunion dinner after a 1.5-year separation, so they prepare it carefully. Chen uses their homemade oil to cook the meal. The cured meat of their own pigs. Freshly picked corn and belly pork. It's Chen Xiong's favorite. Relatives are also invited to the dinner. For Chen Xiong, it's not just a reunion dinner, but also a way of showing respect for his elders and thanking the relatives who help to take care of his family when he is away. The warm atmosphere makes people open up. Chen Xiaobin, who rarely communicates with his son, becomes talkative. Banquets aren't just about eating delicious food. They're also about sharing memories, building bridges between people, and passing on the age-old wisdom inherited from China's ancient agrarian society.